Every app on your iPhone charges you more than it needs to. Spotify, Netflix, dating apps, news subscriptions. For 10 years, Apple banned developers from even telling you cheaper options existed. They couldn't show a price, send a link, or whisper the word cheaper. The European Commission said that silence cost Apple €500 million in fines. I cover Europe's biggest corporate fines every week. Subscribe if you want to understand how €500 million punishments actually work. Here is what Apple's developer agreement actually said. If you built an app for the iPhone, you agreed to a set of rules before a single user could download it. One of those rules banned you from telling your own customers that your product was cheaper somewhere else. No links to your website. No buttons that said buy direct. No pop-up explaining that the same subscription cost 30% less if purchased outside the app. You could not even email a user after they signed up to let them know a better deal existed on your own website. Apple called these anti-steering provisions. Developers called them a gag order. The rule applied to every single app that sold digital goods or subscriptions in Europe. Music apps, video apps, dating apps, productivity tools, news services, fitness trackers, language learning platforms. If you sold something digital on an iPhone, Apple took 30% of the transaction. And if you wanted to tell your customers they could avoid that 30% fee by buying directly from you, Apple's contract said, no. You could build the app, you could host the app, you could watch users overpay month after month. You just couldn't tell anyone it was cheaper somewhere else. And Apple didn't just discourage developers from talking, they made it contractually impossible. The scale of this silence was staggering. Over 1 million developers in the European Union were bound by these rules. Hundreds of millions of iPhone users across Europe were paying inflated prices for subscriptions without ever knowing alternatives existed right there on the developer's own website. Take Spotify as one example. Spotify was paying Apple 30% on every subscription sold through the App Store. The same Spotify Premium subscription on Spotify's own website cost significantly less because there was no Apple commission attached. But Spotify couldn't say that inside its own app. No banner at the top of the screen, no notification after sign-up, no mention anywhere in the user experience that a better deal existed. The math was brutal, and it compounded every single month. A user paying €12.99 per month through the App Store was generating nearly €4 for Apple on every payment cycle. Multiply that across tens of millions of subscribers, across 10 years, across every music and video and dating app in every category, across 30 European countries. Apple's silence rule wasn't just a policy preference, it was a revenue machine generating billions. Spotify launched a public campaign called Time to Play Fair. They filed formal complaints with European regulators. They published open letters explaining the situation to the public. 33 other companies signed the same letter demanding action. A 30% fee that Apple called fair compensation for running the store. A 30% fee that developers called extortion, with no alternative. A 30% fee that the users paying it didn't even know existed. But the fee wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the gag order that prevented anyone from explaining it. In 2022, the European Union decided to end exactly this kind of arrangement. They passed a sweeping new law called the Digital Markets Act. It was designed for companies that controlled access to millions of users. Companies like Apple would be designated as gatekeepers, and gatekeepers would face new obligations they couldn't negotiate away. The most important obligation for this story was breathtakingly simple. You must let developers tell their customers about cheaper options elsewhere, free of charge, no restrictions, no penalties for communicating. In September 2023, Apple was officially designated a gatekeeper for its App Store. They had 6 months to comply with the new rules. The deadline was March 2024. Apple submitted a compliance plan. The European Commission reviewed it carefully and said no. The plan still blocked developers from freely communicating with users and introduced a brand new fee of €0.50 per download for apps distributed outside the App Store. Developers immediately called it a poison pill, a fee structure designed to make alternatives commercially unviable before they even launched. Apple submitted a revised second plan over the summer. The Commission rejected that one too. Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney gave Apple's strategy a name that stuck across the entire industry. He called it malicious compliance. Following the letter of the law while strangling its spirit with new restrictions and fees at every turn, the Commission had seen enough games. On March 25, 2024, they opened a formal non-compliance investigation into Apple's App Store steering rules. By June, they sent Apple preliminary findings, stating the company was in clear breach of the law. But inside Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, the situation was more complicated than outsiders realized. Phil Schiller, the Apple executive who ran the App Store, had privately warned CEO Tim Cook that maintaining these restrictions would create what Schiller called an antagonistic relationship with the entire developer community. Schiller advocated for genuine compliance that would satisfy regulators and preserve developer trust. But Cook sided with Chief Financial Officer Luca Maestri and the finance team instead. The commission revenue was simply too profitable to surrender voluntarily without being forced. This decision would prove enormously expensive. Apple's own head of the App Store told his CEO to comply willingly. His CEO chose the short-term revenue instead. Meanwhile, Apple introduced what critics called scare screens into the compliance process. When a European user clicked one of the few permitted external links, Apple displayed a full-screen warning with alarming language suggesting serious privacy and security risks awaited them outside the App Store. The screens were carefully designed to frighten users into staying inside Apple's ecosystem even when they had every right to leave. Even when Apple technically allowed a single outbound link, they surrounded it with enough manufactured fear to make most users think twice about clicking through. You would think someone would have said something about how obviously this violated the spirit of the law. Nobody at Apple did. By April 2025, the Commission's investigation was complete. On April 23rd, Commissioner Teresa Ribera stood at a podium inside the Berlaymont building in Brussels. She was flanked by European Union flags with the official decision document projected on the screen behind her. The fine was 500 million euros. It was the first penalty ever issued under the Digital Markets Act in its history. On the same afternoon, Meta was fined 200 million euros for a separate violation involving user data choices. 700 million euros in combined fines announced in a single press conference on a single Wednesday afternoon. Ribera's words at the podium were deliberate and measured. "We have taken firm but balanced enforcement action against both companies, based on clear and predictable rules. All companies operating in the EU must follow our laws and respect European values." Apple's response was considerably less measured. They called the fine unprecedented and said it goes far beyond what the law requires. They accused the Commission of continuously redefining what compliance actually means during the investigation. They claimed Brussels was forcing Apple to give away our technology for free, 500 million euros because Apple refused to let developers use the word cheaper inside their own apps. And somehow Apple framed itself as the victim in that sentence. But Apple wasn't finished fighting this battle. On July 7, 2025, Apple filed a formal appeal with the General Court of the European Union, registered as case T438/25. Payment of the 500 million euro fine was immediately suspended pending the appeal's outcome, a process that could easily take 3 to 5 years. In the meantime, Apple revised its App Store terms for European users under pressure. They introduced a new two-tier fee structure, 5% for basic App Store distribution services, 13% for the full suite of App Store features including discovery and promotion, reduced to 10% for smaller developers enrolled in Apple's small business program. They allowed external payment links without scare screens. They relaxed some of the most aggressive steering restrictions that triggered the investigation. Developers surveyed the changes and said it still was not enough. The Commission agreed with that assessment and opened additional investigations into Apple's new core technology fee and its ongoing restrictions on alternative app stores trying to compete in Europe. The Digital Markets Act had shown its teeth for the first time and drawn blood. Apple, Meta, and Alphabet's Google were all under active investigation simultaneously. The precedent was set clearly for the entire technology industry to observe. Gatekeepers could no longer write the rules, enforce the silence, and collect the commission all at once without consequence. For 10 years, Apple's policy was simple and absolute. Don't talk to your own customers about price. In 2025, the European Commission's response was simpler still. 500 million euros says you will. Next week, a company thought no one would notice a few extra cents on every transaction in Europe. They were wrong by hundreds of millions, and the fine proved